Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. As many of my subscribers will know, I am a big fan of retro gaming, and I am absolutely thrilled that I have recently come into possession of this copy of Curse of the Mummy's Tomb from Games Workshop, which is in really fantastic condition. So what I thought I would do in this video is I would unbox it and take a look at the components, show you a little bit of what it's all about, but because this is an old game that is obviously no longer in production, to make this video a little bit more useful, I thought I would throw in some tips and general advice for picking this game up secondhand on eBay based on my general observations. First of all, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is from Games Workshop's old line of bookshelf games. Part of what I believe to be an aborted trilogy of gothic horror games. They had previously released Fury of Dracula, then there was Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. I think there was supposed to be another one in the series, but it never happened. This game was designed by Stephen Hand, who had previously produced Chainsaw Warrior, Chaos Marauders, and Fury of Dracula for Games Workshop, and I would say of his 4 titles for the company, this is probably the least desirable, it's probably the least enjoyable as a game, but it's an incredibly beautiful game, and for collectors like myself, a bit of a must-have. I mean, just look at that cover art, that is brilliant. Look at the mummy leaping out of the sarcophagus. Haha, got you! But anyway, moving on. This game, I believe, came out in 1988, so it's a bit of a senior citizen at this point, and because it wasn't as widely distributed or as popular as something like Hero Quest, it's a little bit harder to find, but you can generally find a few copies on eBay on any given day of the week. And this particular example is 100% complete and pretty much immaculate, which I think speaks to the quality of it as a game. It probably didn't get played half as much as something like Hero Quest, and therefore has maintained its shape a little better. Let's take a look inside. The first thing you should have in your box is a copy of the rules, which is the blue pamphlet here, but it's important to note that there is also a green pamphlet called the Mummy's Tome, which includes information on all of the cards that are in the game and is essential to play. You must have both of these documents. And this particular setup should seem familiar to people who have played the original Dungeon Quest, which also had a rules book with a pull-out section that included all of the details of the cards. And talking about Dungeon Quest, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb does have some similarities with that game. It also brings to mind Talisman, which is of course the most successful title from that series of Games Workshop bookshelf games. I say Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is familiar because it plays from 1 to 4 players. It does have full rules for solo play, much like Dungeon Quest does, but unlike Dungeon Quest, the solo rules aren't really up to much. Unlike Dungeon Quest and Talisman, where to a certain degree you're playing a solitaire game that just happens to have other people involved, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb is much more in your face. There's a lot more gotcha cards. The intention is you are moving around a mummy's tomb in order to find your way to the top. And of course there's a mummy on the loose roaming around, and at the start of each turn there is a bidding phase where players will bid Tanner leaves in order to claim control of the mummy. Furthermore, when you are exploring the tomb, when you enter a space, rather than drawing a card randomly from a deck, the other players at the table get to choose what encounters you face. There's sort of a round robin situation where you go around the table with each player choosing to either play a card on you or to pass, and you can also have the opportunity to play cards on yourself from your hand, which will grant you good things, while of course your opponents are throwing monsters and traps at you. Without that sort of in-your-face element to the game, playing it solo, it feels very random and a little bit pointless. And in that particular situation, if you want a solo dungeon crawl, Dungeon Quest is the way to go. The biggest draw for this game, from my perspective at least, is the beautiful design, the wonderful artwork, and the very striking 3D board. The board includes 4 sections. You get the 3 very colourful floors which make up the different tiers of the pyramid, and then you get the central column section, which comes flat pack and you have to assemble it. And here it is assembled in all its colourful glory. The numbers, by the way, indicate rooms where you will encounter cards, and as I mentioned before, when you enter those rooms, everybody at the table will have an opportunity to play cards at you. You will be facing a maximum of 1 trap, 1 monster, and then potentially finding 1 thing that can help you. The board itself does not go back into the box when it is assembled like this, and the central column only just fits in the box assembled. That means some people may have assembled and disassembled the pyramid each time they used it, which will weaken all of the key points where the boards meet together. So that's something to watch out for, and I do recommend if you have this game to keep the central column assembled so that you don't weaken any of the tabs. If there are any creases in the cardboard, which is probably quite common considering how the board goes together, it is possible to fix that up. I have done videos in my Hero Quest playlist on flattening out the creases and bumps and knocks in cardboard elements. My usual method is to spray the card with something like Febreze, a fabric freshener, sandwich it between layers of greaseproof paper, and then leave it to dry thoroughly. But yes, this board is one of the big attractions of the game, but it is also probably where you are most likely to see some damage, particularly on the tabs. The game comes with one D12, not a comically oversized D12 like this one. This one is clearly not the one that came with the game, it is a replacement. I don't know what colour the original dice was. On the back of the box it's black with white numbers, but most of the copies that I have seen online have a green dice with white numbers. It may well have been available with different coloured dice. That was certainly the case with other Games Workshop games. I'm thinking in particular of Advanced Hero Quest. The game also includes 55 of these Tanner Leave tokens. They're not particularly exciting, they are used, as I mentioned before, for a little bidding element in the game where you vie for control of the mummy on any given turn. And then there is a big wedge of 112 Curse of the Mummy's Tomb cards, and these fall into 4 main types. Throughout the course of the game you'll have a hand of these. On your turn you can play movement cards to move around the tomb, and the compass will tell you the directions in which you can go. And then there are items. You want to play these on your turn when you enter a room so that you can acquire them. But the other players at the table will be playing monsters on you, like this nest of vipers. Or traps, like this sealed portal. Lots of fun stuff in there, but I am not going to reveal any more because I think this is one of those games where it's more fun to face these encounters as they turn up in play rather than knowing them all in advance. And because I know inquiring minds will want to know, these cards are 70mm by 40mm for anybody who wants to try and find some sleeves for them. You should also have 32 of these attribute markers. These are the same as you would find in Dungeon Quest. You use them for marking various stats on your character sheets, or for playing Cones of Dunshire, I suppose. And then finally we have our characters. We have our 4 heroes, or Tomb Raiders if you will, and we have the mummy itself. This is Professor Nayland Cushing's character card. You can see a space at the bottom for tracking lives, and then we have spaces for cunning, dexterity, Egyptology, fortune, speed, strength, and will. The coloured boxes mark starting values, and through the course of the game you may be able to push those values up. Each character has 3 asterisk marks, and those depict the 3 stats that you have to succeed tests in order to win the game in the final challenge at the top of the pyramid. Here is our Professor's miniature. All of these miniatures are from the Games Workshop Gothic Horror line. They're not as easy to find as some of the other miniatures that Games Workshop have produced in the past, and they're lovely. I really like them a lot. They are again a big selling point for this game. I got this game for, I think, £45 included postage, and considering there are 5 Old Hammer miniatures in the box, that seems a pretty reasonable price. Next up is the Reverend Luther Kirkgard, and his miniature seems more like he's fending off flying vampire bats than mummies, but it's a cool miniature nonetheless. Next up we have Marlowe Hammett, who would be my favourite character if it wasn't for the final character I'm about to show you. A classic gumshoe. Very, very cool. Looks like he would probably be a little bit warm in the tomb wearing that trench coat and hat. But whatever, he wants to look cool. And then we have my favourite character in the set. We have Lieutenant General the Earl of Carmarthen. What a great miniature. Sabre raised. Full of pomp and aristocracy. And of course we mustn't forget our mummy. This is a really nice miniature. Not as nice as the Hero Quest mummies, but nice nonetheless. And there we have it, our 4 glorious anti-heroes and our anti-villain. It is worth noting that in an issue of White Dwarf magazine, Games Workshop did publish rules for 4 additional heroes. There was Dodger Fagan, who was a kind of footpad, Dr. Chai Sen Fong, a sort of Fu Manchu knockoff. There was Mycroft Lestrade, who not surprisingly looked like Sherlock Holmes. And then there was the hilariously named Idaho Smith, who, it will not surprise you, looked like Indiana Jones. They appeared in issue 102 of White Dwarf magazine in the UK, and Games Workshop did have miniatures from their Gothic horror line that you could use with those rules. As I've already mentioned, the Gothic horror line is quite expensive in the UK at least. I have seen some of the miniatures that you could use with those bonus White Dwarf rules. I have found Idaho Smith and I also found Mycroft Lestrade. Both of them were £45 on eBay, that's each. Honestly, for what those characters would add to the game, that's a little bit of a stretch for my budget and not something I'm looking to pursue. Because it should be noted that these characters don't have any special abilities. The only thing that makes them distinct is the variations in their stats. So sure, print off the extra character cards, they're readily available online, and then you've got 8 characters to pick from, but because the only difference is the stats, it's not really adding a massive amount to the game and certainly not worth paying huge sums for to get those extra miniatures unless you are an absolute completionist and you really, really like those miniatures. But that about sums it up for me. I am absolutely delighted to have another Games Workshop retro game in my collection. This is going to sit proudly alongside my copy of Dungeon Quest, Heroes for Dungeon Quest, and the like. But I think at this point I've been talking about it for quite long enough, so that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.